We're now in another section of our AutoCAD 2017 Essentials course, and we're now going to look at dimensioning. Now, in the previous section, we looked at text. Now we're looking at dimensioning, which is the other part of annotating your AutoCAD drawings. Now, we're back in that good old building drawing again, and you can see there that we've got the grid lines, we've got the dimension lines. They're all in red on the drawing. Now, you'll notice we've obviously already got dimensioning on this particular drawing. And that's the reason why I want to use this drawing. It means we've already got an existing dimension style. So we talked about text styles in the previous set of videos when we looked at text. Dimension styles have a similar method of setting up the styles to use within your drawing. What I'd like you to do is zoom in on the top left corner of the drawing. Now, we've got no named views for this. Just put your crosshair here, zoom in, so that you can see those dimensions in the top left corner. I'm not worried about the grid bubbles, it's just the dimensions I want you to be able to see. Now, we're going to look at our particular dimension style. So you can see we've got some text there. We're obviously using a text style for the dimension text. Now, that's where you combine the two. The text style and the dimension style are combined. You use your text style to place your dimension text. And as you can see there, it's a nice simple text style, nice simple font. Now, the dimension itself, if I hover over one, can you see highlights like so? And that's what they call a rotated dimension. That's a linear dimension in AutoCAD. And you can see it uses those ticks on each end of the dimension. Now, there's lots of different settings in a dimension style. Now, you can do this from the Home tab on the ribbon. Again, like the text style, go into Annotation. There's our dimension style there. Click on the button. And as you can see, there's all our dimension styles available to us there. Now, I don't know which particular dimension style we're using. How do we test that? Well, I'll just close that box there, and if I go to the Annotate tab on the ribbon, it tells me that we're using the standard dimension style in the Dimensions panel there. But am I? How do I know? Well, it's a bit like the text. Select a dimension, right-click, and then you'll bring up the menu. Now, again, this has kind of gone off the screen a little bit, but that's purely due to the resolution of my screen. We only need to go to the Properties palette. So it's not a problem in this case. So select Properties there on the shortcut menu, and there's the Properties palette. Now, there's lots of information about a dimension in the Properties palette. But the good thing is you can look at all the different information, color, layer, line type, and the dim style is just here. So if I hover over that, it tells me it's the diagonal 2.5mm aerial, just there. So I can now close the Properties palette. I can now go back to my dimension styles. Now, on the Annotate tab on the ribbon, your styles are here. There's the text style. Click on that little arrow. I'll just cancel that. There's the dimension style. Click on that little arrow. So we want the diagonal 2.5mm aerial, which is that one. So that's the style that we're looking at the moment. Now, you'll notice it looks a bit weird on there at the moment. Now, that's because it's obviously set up in a particular way. And that's the diagonal 2.5mm aerial that we need to look at. Now, dimension style wise, I can modify an existing dimension style, or I can create a new one. If I click on New, it will prompt me for a name, and you can see there I'm doing a copy of the diagonal current dimension style. So you can see there that I can do a copy of diagonal 2.5mm aerial. So what I might do there is lose the copy of bit, and what I'm going to do is just put an underscore and copy there like so. And then I'm going to click on Continue. Now, I can make my dimension style annotative. We'll cover that later. And I'm going to use for all dimensions, all dimension types. So if I click there, you can see I can use this particular style for linear dimensions or angular dimensions. I'm going to use it for all different dimensions, linear, radius, and so on. And I'll click on Continue. Now, the dialog box is quite big. I'm just going to bring it down a tad so that you can see it there like that. And you can see that we've got lines. We set up the lines. We set up the symbols and the arrows. We set up the text, how it fits, the primary units in the dimension, any alternate units we may use. You might want to display imperial and metric, for example, and any tolerances you may use. If you're working in a mechanical production environment, you might have plus or minus 2 or 3 millimeters for cutting edges and things like that. Now, I'm actually going to close this dialog down. So I'm just going to cancel that now. And you can see that there's our 2.5mm aerial there. That's the one I'm going to modify, the existing dimension style. So you can see there that if I go to lines now, there's all the settings there. So the dimension lines are coloured by block, line type, and so on. Now, all of this information is already in your drawing. So you can go in and edit this 2.5mm aerial dimension style. Now, I'm only going to edit one particular part of the style. I'm going to go to symbols and arrows like so. And you'll notice it's using those oblique ticks. Can you see that? I'm going to change the arrowhead style to just a closed filled arrowhead. And I'm going to set that for both each end of the dimension like that. And the leader has now become closed filled as well. I quite often just use a dot for that. So you can use a dot like that, or you can use a small dot, or you can use a box filled. It's entirely up to you. Let's do box filled just to be a little bit different. Now, all I'm going to do there is click on OK, like so, and then I'm going to click on close, and you'll notice that everything changes. That's because I've updated that particular dimension style. And that's how you work with dimension styles in AutoCAD 2017. You go in and set up all of those details that you need to set up, and you set it up in a way that it all works. And obviously, as we work through this section, you'll see all the different ways of how we work with dimensions and create the annotation we need on our drawing.